The big guy. This just out.
He made it funny.
He posted a message about debates. Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. Since then, he hasn't shown up for a debate. Oh, what? Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
And then he went on to say, are you free on, I heard you're free on Wednesdays because of his trials.
Yeah. Oh, he wants to debate right now? Yeah. Okay, so he's make my day, pal. Boy, he's so Eastwoodian. Okay, well, he's committed to doing 2 debates, essentially, but I guess not with the Presidential Debate Commission, which, fine by me, to cut them out, who cares? Well, so it's interesting. I mean, it's also probably a sign of a little bit of concern in the camp that you got to get this campaign in the game, boy, because the numbers don't look good. Long time ago, taking nothing for granted, but that is definitely a response to flagging poll numbers, no question about it. And part of the reason that you have flagging poll numbers is because you have a flagging economy, a stagflating economy, actually. Stanley Druckenmiller is a billionaire investor, and he's also a member at Augusta. So he needs to, he might need to get involved there with the PGA and live and work out that deal. But I digress. Druckenmiller had this to say on CNBC Investotainment about Bidenomics generally. This before the announcement yesterday of the new tariffs on Chinese products we'll get to.
If I was a professor, I'd give him an F. Basically, they misdiagnosed COVID and thought we were going into a depression. The Fed did too. I worried about it too in early days. The Fed eventually pivoted, better late than never. Treasury is still acting like we're in a depression. It's interesting because I've studied the Great Depression, and you had a private sector crippled with debt with basically no new ideas. So interventionist policies were called for and were effective. The private sector could not be more different today than it was in the Great Depression. Their balance sheets are fine, they're healthy, and have you ever seen more innovative ideas that the private sector could take advantage of now? You've got blockchain, you've got AI, you've got the whole thing. All government needed to do was get out of their way and let them innovate. Instead, they've spent and spent and spent. And my new fear now is that spending and the resulting interest rates on the debt that's been created are going to crowd out some of the innovation that otherwise would have taken place. We've got a 7% budget deficit at full employment. It's unheard of. And this is when you've got grid spending, you have, you've got defense spending, you have data center spending,
for AI.
And then, of course, you have green. Yep. So this spending is going to take place. You're going to build a capital stock. How do you build a capital stock when government is intruding with regulations and all this spending? And it's just sad because I think we're looking at one of the most exciting periods in terms of potential productivity and enhancing investments ever. And why we're spending like we're still in the Great Depression is beyond me.
Yeah, I actually disagree with Druckenmiller's handle on the Great Depression, but that notwithstanding, his general description of Bidenomics is over the target. So to cover some of the economic fiascos that have been engendered by this administration, Biden yesterday announced he's raising tariffs on Chinese products. 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, 50% on semiconductors and solar panels, 100% on EVs. And this is why he told some flunky at Yahoo.
China is fundamentally underrating their entire industries. They're just they flood a market. They pay whatever it takes to flood it. They make sure to put everybody else out of business and they take over. Or, for example, even if you want it for the longest time, If you want to do business in China, guess what? You have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you're, in fact, going to make sure that they have access to the intellectual property. It goes on and on. It's about being fair. And look, it's about saving American jobs. Because if we allow them to continue what they're doing, to flood the market with EVs that are incredibly cheap, they're not making any money on them, deliberately doing it to put other people out of business. So we're going to protect the American auto workers, we're going to protect American steel and American aluminum.
Yeah. It's a complicated issue, but the net of it is, I mean, if you want to make a protectionist argument for American jobs, as we argued back and forth during the Trump years, we can have that conversation. But this is much more disingenuous because his industrial policy is a fiasco. So in addition to trying to prop up EVs and other associated solar panel, wind farms, other associated green energy plays with his backdoor Green New Deal, now he's got to eliminate more of the competition because his industrial policy is flailing in this country. Okay, for more on this, we're pleased to be joined by economist and Govzilla author Steve Moore. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Well, gosh, I'm worried I'm going to lose my chief economist job at the Dan and Amy show because you got Stanley Druckenmiller now.
Well, yeah, right.
It's temporary.
I agree with almost everything he just said. I mean, it was a brilliant statement. By the way, I do believe in protectionism when it comes to protecting jobs for economists and radio talk show hosts. Okay,
absolutely.
I think those jobs need to be preserved.
There's no question.
A Chinese person taking my job. Okay.
Absolutely.
Look, this economy. I mean, I like what Druckenmiller said. There is absolutely no reason, none whatsoever, that borrowing $1.7 trillion this year in a so-called recovery. Throughout American history, every time, we've had a crisis, we borrow. It dates back, Dan and Amy, to the Revolutionary War. You borrow during a war or during a crisis, and then when the crisis is over, you start to pay down the debt. This is the first time, ladies and gentlemen, in the history of the United States, in our 250-year history, that we have a president who's running up the national debt after the crisis is over. And COVID ended 4 years ago, although I don't know, did you see the news that there's a new strain that's coming this summer, and, we may have to lock down again.
It's called Flirt. It's called Flirt.
What's that?
It's called Flirt, the new strain. It is.
Is it called Flirt? Okay.
Yeah, COVID is such a tease. But
get the masks out again. Dan, have you got your mask ready?
No, I don't. But
I don't go a day without seeing a mask.
So what's the? But I mean, speak to what Biden is doing here with the imposition of these tariffs on China, because when Trump does it, there's a lot of people that run interference for him. When Biden, and the hypocrisy goes both ways. Now, when Biden is doing it, there's criticism. So
it does go both ways.
You heard what I said in terms of what he's doing here, because his industrial policy is flailing, but he's getting heat from his own party, including Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, who said this is a major setback for clean energy. Apparently, Jared Polis is not familiar with how bad this industrial policy is performing.
Now you got two presidents running for president against free trade. That's a scary situation. And I'm a Trump guy, but I don't always agree with his trade agenda. I mean, look, I've had many conversations with Trump on this, and he basically says, look, I'm trying to use tariffs as a weapon. And he's, to be fair to him, he has used the threat of tariffs as a way to, get a change of behavior from the Europeans, from Mexico, from China. But, look, free trade is absolutely essential to American prosperity. We benefit from the fact that we get low-priced, goods from other countries. It lowers prices. By the way, if you want to stem inflation, stopping the inflow of cheaper imports is not a very smart thing to do, is it? So you got two presidents now that are running on tariffs. That's not a healthy sign for America. But the whole green energy industry is a perfect example of an industry that has been completely put on stilts because of government policies, right? And we keep pouring money into green energy, EVs, and all these things, and they're nowhere. If you know,
Right.
I mean, there is no energy transition going on. Wind and solar are nowhere. EV sales are still 6% of total sales.
Horrible.
I actually think that we'd be better if you believe in green energy and you like. And by the way, I'm not against electric vehicles. I just don't want the government spending $20,000 for every electric vehicle that is built and sold. But I really believe, Dan and Amy, that the electric vehicle industry would be better off today if the government had never gotten involved in it in the first place.
Yeah, of course. Of course. That's always the case. I mean, central planning versus, market capitalism. I mean, who wins that game every time if it's a free and fair competition?
Let me make sure, people understand what I'm saying. The problem with the electric vehicle industry, there are many people whose opinion I strongly, admire, who say, look, the future is electric vehicles. Maybe, maybe not. But the fact is that by having the government throw all these subsidies at it, $7,500 to pay, we build the plants, we do this, all of a sudden now the electric vehicle companies are basically producing for the government rather than producing for the consumers. And that doesn't work very well. Did you see Ford and GM have lost over $50,000 for every electric vehicle they built?
Right. Well, and you've had the stories over the last several months of all these car rental dealers trying to unload their electric vehicle fleets, right? I mean, yeah, it's pretty clear what the market response is.
You got it. So, I mean, I think we're in a very precarious time right now for our country. The new inflation report came out today. We're still running at 3.5 to 4% inflation. That's a long way from the 2% target. And I think Druckenmiller is right. The reason that we have this runaway inflation is because we're spending and borrowing $1.7 trillion. The new report that just literally came out yesterday shows that, guess what? The revenues are coming in a little better than expected this year so far, but spending is run amok. And I hate to tell you guys this because you live in the great state of Illinois. You've got to move to Wisconsin because that's where, have you noticed Biden is just pouring money into tax dollars into Wisconsin with all these pork projects trying to buy votes in that critical state.
Well, the other problem that Druckenmiller points out is this government printing and spending crowding out private investment and creating externalities. So, I mean, we've had expose after expose in the last couple of months. There's another one in the Journal this week. There's not enough power for America's high-tech ambitions. Right. Georgia is a magnet for data centers and other cutting-edge industries, but vast electricity demands are clashing with newcomers' green energy goals. And so the hamstringing of not just the energy sector with respect to the attack on fossil fuel producers, but in terms of innovation in the energy sector, that is something that is perhaps one of the most destructive things that the Biden administration has done among many destructive things.
Yeah, there's no way you can put the entire transportation system of America on the electric grid. That is the most dangerous, foolhardy idea I've ever heard. We already have. I don't think you probably had brownouts and blackouts yet, Illinois. But look what's happening in California. That's gone. I think they're a step ahead of Illinois in the green energy movement. The lights are going out there, folks. The air conditioning's going out. They can't keep their factories open because they can't keep the power supply. If you put the entire all our trucks, all our cars, all our ships, all that stuff on the electric grid system, I think it's a fool's errand for sure. And look, how much money do we have to spend on this stuff? I went back, you'll get a kick out of this, Dan and Amy. I went back. Do you remember, Dan and Amy, the famous, you might be too young for this, the famous Jimmy Carter melee speech?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was the summer of 1979. I was still in high school back then. But I remember watching and go, oh, my God, what's happening to our country? But it's so interesting to listen to read that speech. He keeps talking about, we're running out of oil. We got to stop using oil and gas. And he said, what we're going to need is we're going to spend money on wind and solar power. He said that, 5 years ago or something like that. Here we are 45 years later, still spending all this money on wind and solar, and we still only get 6% of our energy from it. So it's a perfect example. The government just keeps doubling down on really, really bad ideas. And did you see, by the way, guys, the latest outrageous idea of the Biden administration. They want to have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Remember them? They're the government-sponsored enterprises that lost $300 billion during the housing crisis in 2008. They want the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to provide insurance for home equity loans now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does insuring a home equity loan promote home ownership?
Right.
Makes sense.
Maybe they'll bring Tiny Dancer back from Japan to run it because, he was one of those guys that got a golden parachute. I think he was Freddie Mac. Anyway, yeah.
All right. So, Stephen Moore, any relief soon with the gas pump at the grocery store? How long do we have to live like this? Because I don't know about you, but gas is almost $5 downtown, and it's about $4.20 out in the suburbs.
Yeah, I would. By the way, you should don't pound about $5 gasoline. I was in San Francisco last week. I woke up, looked out the window of my hotel, beautiful blue skies, sunshine, beautiful mountains, and there's a service station there at the corner. $6.29 for unleaded gasoline.
I'd have a heart attack.
So again, California's way ahead of you guys.
Steve Moore, economist, Godzilla author. Steve, thank you as always.
Okay, guys, have a great day. Take
You
care.
too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. The Stormy Daniels hush money case against Donald Trump is an affront to our basic notions of American justice. Gag orders are typically imposed to protect defendants and secure their right to an untainted jury. Here, the defendant, Trump, has been gagged, leaving him unable to defend himself. Prosecutors are keeping the witness schedule secret until the eve of their testimony. That deprives the defense of the time needed to adequately prepare a cross-examination. Finally, Daniel's seamy testimony inevitably prejudices the jury against Trump, and it's not even relevant to his alleged crime. The endgame is clear. Obtain a conviction of Donald Trump at any cost, secure in the knowledge that when the verdict is overturned, and it will be, that will come after the election. This isn't justice.